tourism policy and planning. But before we do that, I'd like to give you a summary of all the impacts we've discussed in this class, in this subject, in this course. We've talked about three types of impacts. We've talked about the economic impacts of tourism industry. We've talked about the socio-cultural impacts, and we've talked about the environmental impacts. In chapter 13, we talked about the economic impacts, the positive impacts being jobs, income, investment, foreign exchange, and tax revenues. In chapter 11, we talked about the positive socio-cultural impacts, enrichment of culture, peace, education, as well as new facilities being built because of the tourism industry. Just like any other industry, the positive impacts also are accompanied with negative impacts. And some of the economic negative impacts of tourism are price increases, the seasonal employment in our industry, the expensive infrastructure, export-import leakages, and the economic dependence of some countries on the richer countries. The negative socio-cultural impacts of tourism are crime, terrorism, sex tourism, child sex tourism, trinketization of arts and crafts. All of these positive impacts come with the negative impacts. Let's also look at the environmental impacts of tourism. The positive impacts are the carrying capacity, the obligatory taxes that the tourism industry generates that can be put back in the environment. And the negative impacts of tourism are acid rain, global warming, air pollution, water and land pollution. The key in our industry is that knowing the positive impacts, we need to think about how to reduce the negative impacts. The reduction of these negative impacts, the answer to that lies in chapters 15 and 16. Tourism policy and planning. Appropriate tourism policy and appropriate tourism planning can help countries reduce the negative impacts of tourism and therefore truly benefit from the positive impacts the industry can bring to their countries. Let's talk about what tourism policy is. Tourism policy can be defined as a set of regulations, rules, guidelines, directives, and development or promotion objectives and strategies that mainly provide a framework within which the collective and individual decisions that directly impact tourism development and the daily activities within a destination are taken. Thus, a good tourism policy will take into account that the tourism development affects the industry, affects the destination in a positive, in a beneficial way. Thus, all the regulations and rules that support such type of development will truly be beneficial for a destination. That tourism policy will be the most helpful for the destination. Money is important, profits are important, but not at the expense of the negative socio-cultural impacts the industry can bring with it. Not at the expense of the negative environmental impacts the industry can bring with it. Thus, any destination, if it needs to progress in a sustainable way, will need to have a good tourism policy, will need to have a good set of regulations, rules and guidelines for its destination. The main goals of tourism planning are as follows. High visitor satisfaction is very important because that's what's going to keep the money coming in and on a sustainable basis. Let's face the fact, the word of mouth is the best advertisement for any destination, for any product. Thus, visitor satisfaction is one of the main goals of tourism planning because with it will come money. Economic and business success is also another goal of tourism planning. If the businesses within tourism, if the suppliers within tourism make good bottom lines, make profitable bottom lines, they will stay in the business for a long period of time, thus helping the industry to flourish further. Protection of resources is the number 3 goal of tourism planning. All money, all satisfaction, all tourists, all visitors are good, provided the resources that are used to bring them at the first place are well protected and are available for a sustainable period of time. Thus, the protection of resources is very important in a good tourism policy as well as tourism planning. The last goal is community and area integration. The host community, the host area needs to be integrated with the tourism planning that's required for a destination. Unless and until the community buys into the idea, it's very difficult for government to help tourism industry because in fact most of the conversations, most of the exchange will take place between the tourists and the hosts. Thus, to sum it all up, the goals of tourism planning are visitor satisfaction, economic and business success, protection of resources, and community and area integration. Let's now talk about tourism policy and what it seeks to achieve. Well, it seeks to achieve high quality visitor experiences that are profitable to a destination's stakeholders, but at the same time ensuring that the destination is not ignored environmentally, socially, and culturally. As we know, the exchange between tourists and hosts are inevitable. In fact, they are good for both the host destination and the tourist destination. However, it's important for the tourism industry to not ignore the environment, the social aspect of the destination, and the culture that's the very core for which a lot of tourists would travel to a destination for tourism. The areas addressed by tourism policy are usually as follows. The destination image is covered by tourism policy. What type of image would the destination like to be remembered, like to be known by the tourists? The destination image will be a big aspect of the tourism policy. The second is the role of tourism in the overall socio-economic development. What importance are we giving to this industry overall? That will be addressed by the tourism policy of a destination. Taxation. How much revenue do we need this industry to generate, and how much would we charge the taxes? We do know that the higher the taxes, the lesser the tourists will like to come to a destination. But at the same time, if the taxes are very low, then the same money will not be able to put back in the environment. Financing, the sources and the terms of financing in a destination. Tourism policy also covers the transportation and the infrastructure development that the destination would like to see in the next few years. Environmental practices and restrictions are also covered by the tourism policy of a destination. Union and labor legislation will also be discussed when we talk about the tourism policy. Technology makes a big impact on the tourism policy. The ease at which we would like people to travel to our destination, as well as the ease with which people abroad can look at the destination and find information about it. Thus, information seeking will also be important by the tourism, will also be considered by the tourism policy. The marketing practices and the foreign travel rules. Do we want more people to come in without any problems? And if that so happens, then you will not be able to control the amount of the carrying capacity for a destination. But at the same time, if we make the rules very strict, people will not find ease. They will not find it easy to travel to the destination. Thus, all these areas need to be addressed by the tourism policy. The main stakeholders of tourism, as we've discussed before, are the residents of the host destination, the local, municipal, regional, provincial, and national governments, the local, regional, national environmental groups, the local visitors and the excursionists, those are your day tourists, the day visitors, the actual tourists, the tourism industry sectors, the destination management organizations that market the destination around the world as well as to different states within a country, the cultural and heritage groups, and the social health and education groups. All of these are stakeholders of tourism. Thus, the tourism policy needs to take into account that each of these stakeholders should be benefited from the tourism policy in the best possible way. In fact, in a symbiotic way, so that each of these stakeholders can exist and coexist with each other. The Total Tourism Destination Management Program thus talks about the competitiveness of a destination as well as how to make the destination sustainable. Thus, it talks about resource deployment as well as it talks about the resource stewardship. In the competitiveness, we do take into account the marketing, the financial management, the operations, the HR, the organization management, the information management, and strategic planning. In the sustainability issues, we do talk about management of most of the resources that are difficult for us to find now. For example, water quality, air quality, wildlife, forests, visitors, resident, and the integrity of the destination. Thus, while we think about destination monitoring, we have to also think about destination research to find creative ways so that the destination can be sustainable. The tourism industry, in fact, interfaces with a lot of other sectors of the economy. It has a direct interface with the legal, political players, the technology sector, the entertainment industry, the financial sector, the education sector, transportation industries and infrastructure, resource extraction industries, health services, environmental groups. Tourism touches each of these sectors very closely, and hence, whatever happens in the tourism industry has a direct impact on all these other sectors. At the same time, anything happening in all the other different sectors has a direct impact on the tourism industry. Thus, the policy, when it's made, needs to take into account all of these other sectors so that all these sectors can coexist, can overlap, and benefit from each other. The structure and composition of tourism policy usually is that it has a tourism philosophy. The philosophy leads to the vision of the tourism industry in the destination. That should help in doing an audit of the destination, and once an audit is complete, the tourism objectives and constraints can be developed. They need to be developed for both supply sector and the demand sector, thus helping in the macro management organization of our industry. The tourism policy and planning lies, that's where the answer to all the negative impacts and how to monitor and how to keep them in control lies. The tourism policy of a destination, the tourism planning of a destination is usually in the hands of the government of the destination. Hence, it needs to be taken care of and used and implemented, monitored, researched in a very, very positive way. Otherwise, the very industry that can bring a lot of money, a lot of tourists, a lot of satisfaction, great image, can also bring with it some of the negative impacts. I hope you enjoyed this session. I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.